Let's go ahead and take to the stage, though, and dive deep into this matchup between our two Pokemon trainers. Once again, this is Adam Scruggs versus Zhang. Zhang is the Mamoswine player on the right side of your screen, but
the
Adam,
+2.
not to be shown up, has a very unique team himself with that Indeedee Iron Crown size spam combination. You have the Ogerpon Hearthflame Mask, Tornadus Incarnate, and Urshifu Rapid Strike for some big damage, and to top it all off, Regidrago as well. You know, every time I see Regidrago, I expect to see it with a Gholdengo very close by, but it looks like instead Adam decided to use Iron Crown as that Steel-type Pokemon and maybe Tachium Cutter as that main attack instead of Make It Rain.
I mean, if you maybe squint a little bit, Iron Crown and Gholdengo kind of look similar.
No, one is on a surfboard.
One is on a surfboard and one has horns, but they're both like tall steel types.
I want to break out the Pokedex now and actually do a height comparison, but maybe we'll save that for NAIC.
There we go. Of course, we can also confirm this Indeedee does indeed have Trick Room, so we do have the option for that speed being reversed alongside the Ogerpon Hearthflame, Iron Crown, Tornadus, Urshifu Rapid Strike, and like you called out, Gabby, the Regidrago. Dragon Energy, Dragon Fang, a very, very scary move because it is very powerful. It does hit both of your opponent's Pokemon, and it does some huge damage if you have the Regidrago at full HP.
Yeah, and just to clarify one thing real quick, there were life-size cutouts at EUIC last weekend, so I'm putting a formal request in for Iron Crown and Gholdengo. Ogerpon, also shorter than you'd expect.
Ogerpon is friend size. Yeah. There we go.
No, I think that this is a really offensive team here from Adam, and I think what's really cool about him in particular as a player is not only does he enjoy running underutilized Pokemon, in the past he went X-3 at Charlotte, so he won 6 games, lost 3, and he was using Iron Treads and Goodra, which are two very underutilized Pokemon.
They are, and the Iron Treads now is an Iron Crown, the Goodra's now a Regidrago. We traded some types out there. But again, this team it's a kind of an archetype we see a little bit, but not too often, and Adam taking that and running with it. I respect that. It's really fun to kind of pick up some unused stuff and, you know, make it into a team that can threaten deep runs in tournaments. Like a Mamoswine, for example. Not something we see too often. Again, Zhang running the Mamoswine alongside the Fluttermane, Raging Bolt, Ogerpon, Hearthflame, Rillaboom, and Urshifu Rapid Strike of his own.
Yeah, and the one thing that I've learned about Zhang from watching him in my local scenes a lot is that he's a very, very careful player. You know, he prefers slower end games. He prefers sort of looking at your opponent, trying to figure out what their strategy is, and then adjusting his strategy accordingly. So it's not a surprise then to look at his team and see the Assault Vest on the Raging Bolt, the Speed Control Fluttermane with Icy Wind and Taunt like we saw in the previous round, and even the Rillaboom and the Urshifu, you know, both have Protect/Detect and are meant to sort of play a little bit slower, I think, than you would typically see. But then you have to wonder where the Mamoswine fits into all this.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it gets great Ice-type damage thanks to Icicle Crash. It gets priority with Ice Shard, Clear Amulet. You don't have to worry about being intimidated anymore. But still, a very unique Pokemon pick, and you have to wonder if this will pilot him to another regional championship, as he won the 2022 Milwaukee Regionals just a couple of years ago.
He won a couple years ago and also has 2 top 16 finishes this year, both in Charlotte and Portland. So looking to go one further. Of course, no stranger to day 2 of regionals this year even, but hoping to take that first step, take that 4th win, get him over the halfway point of those 7 wins. Adam Scruggs standing in his way with his psychic types. It's going to be really cool to see. This is also the 3rd Ogerpon we've seen on stream so far between these 2 players and the last round, and none of them have Follow Me, which is interesting. I believe there's a Swords Dance on Adam's and then Stomping Tantrum on Jay's, just like we saw on Rajan's. So some more offensive Ogerpons coming through instead.
Some more offensive Ogerpons, which is great, I think, for us to note as a metagame adjustment. But for now, we will be taking a offensive start as well, with both Ogerpon Hearthflames out on the field. Raging Bolt staring down the Urshifu for Adam. So I think Adam's off on the back foot thanks to that water versus electric type matchup already.
And speaking of offensive Ogerpons, that's actually a big detriment to Adam right now, because Follow Me is not available to protect the Urshifu from that Raging Bolt. Thunderclap, because the Urshifu on Adam's side is Terra Water, will be super effective no matter if Adam opts to Terrastallize that Urshifu. Of course, we do have the Indeedee, which could block a possible priority Thunderclap, but that just adds another layer of danger for this Urshifu that otherwise it might not have had if the Ogerpon had Follow Me.
Yeah, I don't think Raging Bolt is necessarily threatened to go straight for the priority move as well. And, even if it did here, Indeedee comes in to save its partner Pokemon from that priority attack, or just the act of switching itself will negate any moves like Sucker Punch or Thunderclap, as you don't use an attacking move. But if you want to use an attacking move in the future, Ogerpon Hearthflame on Adam's side of the field goes straight for a Swords Dance, Woodhammer into the Indeedee to drop it below half its health, and we get the confirmation of Rocky Helmet on that Indeedee. Electro Web is the Raging Bolt's attack of choice. Indeedee able to hold on, and the speed of both that Ogerpon and Indeedee is dropped by 1 stage.
Really cool play by both players, I think. Indeedee coming in there would negate a possible Thunderclap, and of course now sets up Ogerpon to have a partner next to it that can use Follow Me, redirect a big attack after it goes for a Swords Dance. I think possibly like an Ivy Cudgel into that Ogerpon slot on Adam's side was less likely, so that was a decently free Swords Dance there, and are up to +2 attack. However, I really like that Electro Web play because now the Ogerpon on Jay's side is going to be faster than both of Adam's Pokemon. Indeedee is very low health, so it's probably not able to set up a Trick Room for the remainder of this game, which could be a possible way to take advantage of that Electro Web. However, just taking so much damage on the switch really limits that option.
Yeah, I think that if you want to try and set up a Trick Room endgame, you would also need to ensure you had Pokemon in the back that could take advantage of it, and that choice card for Shifu is not necessarily aligned here. What is aligned is the Ivy Cudgel to KO the Indeedee with a bonk to the head. It is knocked out, and Ogerpon goes for a second Swords Dance.
Oh my.
It is now at +4 attack, and assuming it can hold on through this Dragon Pulse and find an opening in the next turn, it's gonna do so much damage.
It can do so much damage, and the Choice Scarf Urshifu comes in here. Now the Psychic Terrain is up. There is no way that Jay can go for a Thunderclap to KO it unless Jay's Rillaboom is in the back. But a potential swap to Rillaboom for a Thunderclap means that you're swapping Rillaboom into this Ogerpon, which will probably just immediately get KO'd by an Ivy Cudgel. I think that was a really risky second Swords Dance there. If you're able to get out some damage that turn instead, you're trading damage from the Dragon Pulse for a possible KO into Jay's Ogerpon, or some really big damage into Raging Bolt, which I think is going to be a really big issue for Adam for the rest of this game.
Yeah, I think it was high risk, high reward. Now this Ogerpon is able to potentially one-hit knockout a majority of the Pokemon on Jay's side of the field, depending on what he brought into this matchup. We get the reveal of his third Pokemon. It is going to be the Rillaboom to set up the grassy terrain to ensure that a Thunderclap from this Raging Bolt would connect. But first, a Terrastalization. I believe this is going to be the Hearthflame Ogerpon on Adam's side of the field, terrastalizing this turn into that fire type, going to activate Embody Aspect and get another attack boost. So it's at +5 attack. That is only 1 boost away from the maximum.
Almost belly drum at this point. You've taken enough damage. Thunderclap does come through and does one-hit KO Urshifu with a critical hit. Maybe mattering, I'm not sure, based on how they're trained. That can be a very, very close damage calculation there. But Ogerpon will have the chance to go for this Terrifier boosted +5 Ivy Cudgel into the Raging Bolt.
That's a one-hit knockout.
KO. A fire type move, one-hit KOing a Raging Bolt, Gabby, that is unheard of.
It is absolutely unheard of, but that's how you have to play around Pokemon like Raging Bolt.
Yeah.
Especially when it's holding the Assault Vest. You know that its trainer has invested in that defensive, in that health stat to boost the defenses so it can stay on the field. It can go for the Electro Webs, the Thunderclaps. But trading the Urshifu for the Raging Bolt there for Adam, I think really opens up the game. You do still have to worry about the relative speeds of these Pokemon, but Regidrago does have a Dragon Fang and Dragon Energy. That's going to do a lot of damage. You still have the +5 on your Ogerpon to worry about. Even though you may not have the Pokemon advantage, you certainly have the offensive one.
Spiky Shield coming through for Adam's Ogerpon, not wanting to take any damage, not wanting to be faked out, but fake out hitting the other slot instead. Stomping Tantrum from Jay's Ogerpon into the Spiky Shield of Adam's means no damage comes through other than a little bit of Spiky Shield chip damage. And of course, Regidrago will flinch this turn. It's a really tough spot, I think, Gabby, for kind of both players, because if you're looking at the Ogerpon on Adam's side, terrifying. Like, +5, Terrifier. I think anything that takes an Ivy Cudgel gets immediately knocked out. But you do have to remember the Electro Web that came through to earlier on, the Ogerpon on Jay's side should be faster for the rest of this game.
It should, and I like how Adam went for the double spiky shield as a result of that. I think just recognizing that the Ogerpon needs to be on the field to remain a threat. Unfortunately, does not get the double spiky shield / protect there, so as a result, Stomping Tantrum is able to connect and pick up the KO onto that friend-sized Pokemon. But at the end of the day, this does leave this opportunity for a Dragon Energy from the Regidrago and brings the Ogerpon down this turn and leaves the Rillaboom in the yellow.
This actually might be pretty close. Rillaboom only has access to grass-type moves, and I believe it's probably going to be slower than this Regidrago, so only Grassy Glide will be able to come out before Regidrago can attack. Depending on the fourth Pokemon for Jay here, this could get interesting, but Urshifu coming through, I believe one close combat probably should be able to end this game, just because one close combat means that there is no more huge Dragon Energy damage coming through.
Yeah, we also have not seen a Terastallization from Jay just yet. And right on cue, goes for that Steel-type Terastallization onto the Urshifu. So Urshifu now also going to resist the Dragon-type attacks from this Regidrago. Overall, a very offensive start and endgame for Adam, bringing some of the most powerful physical attackers in the format, but Jay just able to navigate around those Pokemon and pick up the KO on Regidrago to win the first game in this set.
That was really kind of back and forth. I think the huge, obviously the big Ivy Cudgel went at KO into the Raging Bolt, which is really not something you're probably ever going to see again, just to be quite honest. That is a very rare scenario there. There sure is, but you probably had to be at +5 for that, right? Like, I don't even know if +4 does that. Raging Bolt is really bulky, and you get the 2 Sword Stances up, you get that big KO, which was all well and good, but you traded 2 Pokemon for it just to take the KO on 1 Pokemon and get a bunch of damage and a speed drop to your name in return. And like, you have to wonder, was that worth it, right? You still end up losing the game despite that big KO, despite the +5 setup. And I think if you're Adam, maybe you try to start getting some damage onto the field a little bit quicker, just so you don't find yourself so behind after you do start trying to fire off those Ivy Cudgels.
Yeah, part of me can't help but wonder if a single follow me into Sword Stance on that Ogerpon turn 1 in game number 2 would be just enough offense and just enough redirection in order to give him the advantage. But you said, you know, we might not see that KO again. We have the replay right here.
Shoot,
so,
you got me.
Game 1-0, Gabby Jake.
That's true.
Oh, and he even went for it too.
We're throwing back to the Z move dances. Now if you get an Ivy Cudgel KO, you got a bonk.
But yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, I think that Adam just had a lot of potential on his side of the field. Unfortunately, just did not find the alignment he needed. And especially knowing that the Urshifu was that last Pokemon for Jay, and he also had the Terastallization still available, it just had a very favorable matchup at that point in time.
It did. I think Adam just used a bit too many resources trying to get that Ogerpon set up, and even though it did get set up, it was in a position where it was really not set up to sweep anymore. The only setup was the +5 attack, and it was a -1 speed from the Electro Web, which meant that the Urshifu, the Ogerpon, and Jay's side were pretty much guaranteed to outspeed it. And you do have to also think that the Rillaboom is a really important Pokemon for Jay in this matchup. I think you really do not want Psychic Terrain up, which means you have to bring Rillaboom, but Rillaboom's actually kind of bad into the rest of Adam's team. So maybe trying to find a way to leverage that if you're Adam. Force the Rillaboom out, then take advantage of it.
Yeah, and Adam starts game number 2 off with just another offensive start. Tornadus and the Regidrago immediately threatening super effective damage against the Raging Bolt. On the opposing side of the field, Ogerpon Hearthflame once again its partner. And I gotta say, it must be very tempting for Adam to go for that Tailwind Dragon Energy play to kick things off.
It really is. Like, I believe the Raging Bolt doesn't even have Snarl.
No, it does not.
You got the Dragon Pulse, which can do some good damage, but you really have to Terastallize that Raging Bolt if you don't want it to take a huge Dragon Energy, and that does open it up later on for something like an Ivy Cudgel no longer being resisted.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we see from Jay. A turn 1 lock. I believe it was the final turn in game number 1
Yeah.
he Terastallized. In game number 2, starting things off with a Terastallization, and Adam opting to protect the Tornadus this turn, actually protect both the Pokemon on his side of the field. I think correctly scouting to see if that Terastallization would take place. Ivy Cudgel therefore no longer able to connect with that Tornadus, and that Raging Bolt opts for a Electro Web. So Jay relying on that speed control once again early on in the game.
I think it's a smart double protect there. You're scouting out a possible Terastallization, which Adam did get out of Jay right off the bat. That's really big, knowing that a possible Ogerpon in the back can come in and maybe just have to Sword Stance once instead of twice to get that KO. And of course, knowing that the rest of Zhang's Pokemon are no longer able to terrestrialize can be very, very useful going on in this game.
Well, a turn 1 terrestrialization can only be followed by a turn 2 terrestrialization. That's not true. There's actually many ways you can follow it up. But Regidrago is once again confirming where its head is, going for that Steel-type terrestrialization. I'm sorry. This Pokemon is just one of those ones that every time I see it, it is a Pokemon of all time. But Rain Dance will protect both the Tornadus and the Regidrago from that Fire-type Ivy Cudgel.
Oh,
Draco
no.
Meteor unable to connect with the opposing Ogerpon from that Regidrago, and it looks like a critical hit Electro Web.
Double critical hit.
Double critical hit.
My.
Was able to pick up the KO on that Tornadus after the Ivy Cudgel connected with it earlier.
That's a really unfortunate turn for Adam there. That would be a really big Draco Meteor combined with the Dragon Fang, probably able to just straight up one-hit KO that Ogerpon. And I think that was a smart terrestrialization as well. If the Raging Bolt does opt to go for Dragon Pulse into that slot, you're mitigating so much damage. And if you happen to get caught with an Ivy Cudgel into that slot as well, I like the Rain Dance there to prevent the big damage coming through. And of course, you set up this Urshifu later on as well. Unfortunately for Adam, though, the combination of missing that Draco Meteor means that Ogerpon is still very healthy. Jay hasn't even taken damage yet at all this game, and you also have lost your Tailwind option. There's no Tailwind for the rest of this game.
There's no Tailwind, and you've also set up Rain Dance who will hinder your own Ogerpon moving forwards as well. And we do see Adam switch out the Regidrago for Ogerpon, I think partially as a result, recognizing that this Ogerpon maybe not able to get to the +5 KO that we saw it get to in game number 1. Aqua Jet does a decent amount of damage to the opposing Raging Bolt. Stomping Tantrum, though, goes into the Ogerpon, which is neutral because it has not terrestrialized yet. Thunderbolt into the Urshifu. That's a one-hit KO.
Critical hit. Doesn't matter this time. I promise you that Urshifu was doomed from the start. I like the Aqua Jet selection from Adam there. It does bypass Thunderclap, which operates identically to Sucker Punch if you're familiar. So if the Aqua Jet goes first, Thunderclap would have failed. But a benefit to Zhang not having Snarl like we kind of expected earlier on is that it does have space for Thunderbolt instead. Really safe Thunderbolt there. Even with the rain, the Choice Scarf Urshifu should not have been able to one-hit KO that Raging Bolt. And of course, it is a Choice Scarf Urshifu that cannot protect, so Thunderbolt is guaranteed damage into that slot.
Yeah, Thunderclap does miss the knockout onto the Regidrago, but a follow-up Ivy Cudgel will do enough damage to secure that KO. And Jay just playing it very safe, I think, throughout the entirety of this game number 2. You know, yes, locks in that terrestrialization turn number 1, but overall a great type choicing. You know, getting that fairy typing so you don't have to worry about the dragon type damage, and now you also can stick around on the field a little bit longer. Unfortunately, it does look like Ogerpon was able to get a KO this turn with a +2 Horn Leech.
Hold on. We maybe have a game here.
Yeah, I mean, yes, Zay does still have the Pokemon advantage. It's currently 3-1, but that was a significant amount of damage from that +2 Horn Leech that I quite frankly was not expecting.
Summing Tantrum does come through here, does a little bit under half damage to Adam's Ogerpon. And we do see the speed interaction. Adam's Ogerpon should be a bit faster than Jay's, barring any kind of speed control on Jay's end of the field for the remainder of this game. And even though the rain is up, we do see Horn Leech as the grass move of choice for Adam, which might come in handy if he is able to get some more Horn Leeches off, recover up some more HP. And Jay's Urshifu comes in here. It cannot terrestrialize and is a water type. So if you're able to possibly get a Horn Leech into that slot, you have to wonder.
I mean, it is worth noting here that Jay's Urshifu does have access to Detect as it's holding Splash Plate. It's not one of those choice item variants that have been ruling the metagame so far, but instead it's actually a switch. So no Horn Leech onto the Urshifu. Instead, it's going to be the Rillaboom that takes that grass type damage instead, and it'll be able to take that grass type damage a lot more comfortably. Brings in the grassy. I say comfortably, but it still does over half damage.
Yeah.
Ogerpon with Swords Dance is not a Pokemon to treat lightly for sure. Ivy Cudgel from the opposing Ogerpon into Adam's Ogerpon. Worth noting here that with the rain on the field, that did about the same amount of damage as the Stomping Tantrum. So now that rain is off the field, it probably will fall short of a knockout, but with any damage from the Rillaboom should be enough to secure it in.
That was well baited from Zhang there, bringing the Urshifu in to try and bait that Horn Leech into the Rillaboom slot. It kind of takes the heat off of Zhang's Ogerpon, which is something that I think you really need to keep up. This Ogerpon on Zhang's end is kind of the last thing remaining that can possibly do some big damage with these Ivy Cudgels, especially now that the rain has ended. Ivy Cudgel now a much stronger option. A little bit of an unfortunate thing for Zhang there is that because he does have Protect on the Rillaboom, he only has access to Grass-type damaging moves, which will be double resisted by the Ogerpon on Adam's side. So at this point, the Rillaboom is kind of just like a fake-out bot. Like, that's the main thing it's useful for. And if it's stuck on the field, it doesn't have the option to do much damage, but Ivy Cudgel coming out from Zhang's first, actually.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Zhang was able to connect the Ivy Cudgel onto Adam's Ogerpon. Ogerpon on Adam's side of the field did return with a one-hit knockout, but because Rillaboom is able to deal damage this turn, it is able to do enough damage to secure the knockout there. So an indication of a late-game speed tie, it looks like, between these two Ogerpon. Unfortunately for Adam, it looked like he was able to find an opening, try and find his way in to get a win and get us into game 3, but Zhang, calm, cool, and collected, able to take the win and is currently 4-0 in the tournament. You
have to imagine if that speed tie goes differently, that Adam could possibly have taken that game.
Yeah,
especially because that +2, you know, I believe the Swords Dance happened as Adam's third Pokemon got knocked out.
Yep.
So it truly was a 1v3 at that point, and Horn Leech coming in there, I think a lot of times with the Swords Dance Ogerpons, you see something like a Wood Hammer instead for extra damage, but unfortunately for Adam, barely just not enough, and Zhang is able to weather the storm. I think really, really well done, especially with that turn swapping in the Rillaboom. You make sure that you get the fake out option on the field. You buy time to let the rain run out so your own Ivy Cudgel is much more effective, and you don't allow yourself to be taken over by this Swords Dance Ogerpon.
Yeah, I gotta say though, if you are trying to find an out in a game like this in particular, there's just so much good synergy between Swords Dance and Horn Leech, because when you use Swords Dance, you typically take damage on that turn.
Right.
Ogerpon is a naturally fast Pokemon, and especially if you have like a Tailwind up, though that wasn't the situation in this game number 2, you can then outspeed, you can heal up all that damage you took prior to your next attack, and then the turn after that, you can either just use Horn Leech for the knockout, get some more health back, or you can just start going straight for those Ivy Cudgels. So I really liked the strategy that Adam put together here. It was just unfortunate that these Pokemon were not able to break through this really oppressive lead of the Raging Bolt and the Ogerpon on Zhang's side of the field until that endgame.
I think you also have to give a lot of credit to Zhang for not getting caught off guard.
Yeah.
You did see the Regidrago mix up for the lead, but terrestrializing that Raging Bolt right off the bat meant that Regidrago really was not a threat to that slot at all. We saw the big Thunderbolt come through to KO the Urshifu on Adam's end, and that's another smart adjustment that Zhang made, not getting faked out by a possible Aqua Jet mitigating the Thunderclap, just remaining kind of cool, calm, collected the the entire time.
Adam saluted his Ogerpon there. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't catch that, no. I love it.
Ogerpon, the great friend indeed. And I mean, again, it just does so much damage, and I think this is exactly why Adam is currently, well, 3-1 now, but was undefeated going into this round. You have to just play very carefully around it. And unfortunately, we did not see the Mamoswine from Jay in that matchup, but Swords Dance Hearthflame Ogerpon kind of explains why at the end of the day.
I mean, even with the Poison Terrestrialization on the Mamoswine, that won't save you from a +5 IV Cudgel.
It won't, but still, very cool tech. I do hope that we can check in with Jay later on in the tournament and just see how that Ice-type Pokemon's working out for him. As, you know, I think this was one of the talking points I had going in for Vancouver. You know, what are the unique Ice-type Pokemon in the metagame? You know, Articuno has obviously proven that there is a perfect opportunity for that Pokemon to do well.
Yeah.
Now we have Mamoswine. What other Ice types are there?
I don't know, and even just thinking about it, I just realized Mamoswine does have Thick Fat, which reduces Fire-type damage. If you Terrestrialize into a Poison type, you're resisting Grass as well. So you actually have something that kind of uniquely resists both of Ogerpon Hearthflame's moves. Could be kind of cool.
It doesn't account for Swords Dance, but absolutely correct.
But, I don't think much can account for Swords Dance.
Yeah, that's fair. But still, and not only does it have access to all that, you know, I think having a ground type move, in this case it was high horsepower on this Mamoswine, does give it a lot more playability versus a Pokemon like Articuno, who famously had 4 Ice-type attacks. You have the priority move as well that will help you chip off damage. Like, I think there's a lot of potential for it here.
Ground Ice is actually very good type coverage.
It is.
If you think about it, like Ice types don't like facing Steel types or Fire types, both of which Ground hits super effectively. Ground types are the most scared of Flying types, which Ice covers very well. So Mamoswine, just with its 2 same type attack bonus attacks, hits most of combo things in the format for at least neutral damage, if not super effective. So it's a cool call.
It's a very cool call.
Cool call. Cool call. Cool ice. Ice is cool.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were having your own berry effective or whatever that pun was from earlier.
Not on purpose, but I'm just so good I did it on accident.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, on that note, the interview is ready for our winner of the previous round, Zhang. Joe, please take it away.
Thank you very much, All right, combine your names, Gabby and Jake. I'm here with Zhang, and congratulations, you're 4-0 to start the day here in Orlando. How does that feel?
Well, I feel is till now I think it's quite easy to get a 4-0. Although I played on the stream, but you know the process is just extraordinary. So I think my opponent just played very well, but this is too many speed ties and hexes. So I'm very glad to get a 4 right now, but I think just not a very fantastic match on stream.
Now, I don't know if you knew or not, but your match was selected as the community choice match. So that means everyone in Twitch chat chose this matchup, and it was based off of the archetypes that you and your opponent had. So when you sat down and saw the team preview, did you think, oh, this is actually an interesting matchup, how this match can kind of play out?
Yeah, I must say that because I brought Mamoswine to Orlando, and I was very willing to pick it on the stream, but the matchup doesn't allow me to do so because my opponent was running Iron Crown and Regidrago, as well as with Scarf or Shifu Rapid Strike, and my team lacks protection to these attackers, while I pick my Mamoswine. In fact, I just played a very similar team in round 3, so I was trying to pick Mamoswine to my battle teams, but I failed, so it's just a pity. I think maybe I still got a chance to pick Mamoswine in the future.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You got 5 more rounds of Pokemon today. Hopefully, fingers crossed, you make day 2, and you got all the rounds available tomorrow as well. But this matchup is pretty interesting because you have the Mamoswine, but then of course because of thick fat, Ogerpon Hearthflame might not be as intimidating as you would think of firsthand. However, if an Ogerpon gets the +5 attack, that's still going to be scary even with thick fat.
I think thick fat with clear almond made me quite easier to deal with the balanced team, such as the teams with Ogerpon Hearthflame and as well as the Incineroar. And I also tried some different archetypes on the Mamoswine, such as Cover Coat with Oblivious, but I think it fits better in the Tailwind team. So I think Mamoswine is still a very potential Pokemon in this regulation because of the return of Raging Bolt and a bunch of ground type Pokemon get restarted in this regulation, such as Tinglu and Landorus Thurin, although it just left for a while. But I think it's a good time to use Mamoswine. So.
Yeah, there's also a lot of grass types out there, right? That the ice typing would be nice into. It's kind of similar to that. We feel like ice is a really strong offensive type right now because a lot of the top Pokemon in the metagame, they either are weak to it or they just take neutral, so they're taking strong damage. When you talk about a team with Mamoswine on it, are you going, when you're sitting there and you got a notebook out and you're making a team, do you start number 1 Mamoswine and then build a whole team around it? Or are you building a team and then you're like, what's that one Pokemon that might be unconventional that could give me an edge?
I think my strategy is to seek the best archetype to running around the Mamoswine, because it's such a Pokemon who needs abundant supports in the team. So I think there are several answers, and in Orlando Regional, I just picked this one. So I still think we have different answers about this Pokemon, especially in the upcoming Regulation G.
Well, I was actually going to ask, before Regulation G, I was going to ask about Regulation F and other uncommon Pokemon. I'm sure you're building teams all the time and trying out different archetypes. Are there any Pokemon that, for anyone watching at home, you think has the potential to be a viable pick that might be underrepresented or underutilized in the meta currently? It didn't even have to be on your team. Like, is there another Pokemon that you think people are sleeping on its value?
Yeah, I think the one of the most interesting things in Pokemon VGC is to dig the different potentials on the different Pokemon, especially something like Mamoswine, who achieved some the Mamoswine just won the WCS 2013. So I think it's still a Pokemon with a good shape in this regulation. So the process to explore it, I think, is full of interest.
Okay, and then my last question for you: after you won that game, do you have any shout outs you want to give to any friends or family watching at home?
Sorry.
Any shout outs for friends, team?
Oh yes. I think the first person I want to shout out is Cheng Peng. He just won the 2022 Salt Lake City Regional, and he's currently working in China, and he cannot attend the official tournament of Pokemon right now. But I think we still have chance in the future. And I also want to shout out to Shiliang Tang and Yichun Wu and all my friends in the New England, and as well as all the people who supported me in my road to explore the Mamoswine. Although I didn't bring it on Smidge on the stream actually, but I think I still got a chance. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you still entertained everybody with that great match. So congratulations to you. You're 4-0, fingers crossed. You can get those 7 victories today. You got 5 more rounds to get 3 of them, and we wish you the best luck, and hopefully we're going to see you in day 2 tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break here. We come back, we're going to have more coverage from the Orlando Regional Championships.